Are you constantly trying to improve different aspects of your life? And if so, do you ever stop and think about how one change affects everything else about you? My name is Aretha, and today I'd like to talk about self management and why we should think of ourselves as complex systems. I will also share 3 things we can do to use this type of thinking in our personal development journey. Before we dive into what self management is, I'd like to briefly talk about systems thinking because I find that the two concepts are closely related. Systems thinking is a way to study complex systems by considering all the different components that make up a particular system and how these components interact with each other over time. A system is dynamic in the sense that its components shift and adjust over time. So the system is constantly rebalancing itself. The results that come out of a system are more than just the sum of what's happening with individual components. The interaction between the components has a big impact on how the system performs. So we can think of ourselves as complex systems because we are. And self-management is an elegant way to describe what we're trying to do through personal development. We are managing all the pieces that make up ourselves so that we can create the best functioning system. There are many definitions for self-management on the internet, and they vary depending on the context in which they are used. But it usually boils down to self-control and self-regulation. But I like to think of self-management a little bit more broadly. See, you are your most important asset. And there are many components that make up the system that you are. You play a lot of different roles in your life. You have a variety of personality traits. You have different skill set that you use in different circumstances. You are a complex person with a lot of different attributes and variables. And anytime you try to adjust a particular component, you cannot change that component alone. The changes affect other components of your system. And self-management is remembering to look at the bigger picture of how one change has ripple effects in other areas of your entire system. So self-management includes all the things you're doing for personal development. It includes time management, it includes your productivity, your energy management, goal setting, working with your emotions, planning your future, your vision. Everything you're doing to grow as a person falls within self-management. Next, I'd like to talk about 3 things we should all be doing to grow using self-management. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up on this video and subscribe to my channel. The very first thing to do is to study yourself. I think you are the most fascinating subject that you will ever have to learn about in your lifetime. So why not spend some time getting to know yourself and digging deep into who you are, what makes you tick, what your tendencies are, what makes you motivated, what helps you move forward, and what is an impediment to you. In order for the different pieces in your system to work together, you have to understand how you operate. You basically have to build an owner's manual for yourself. I find that there is a difference between how we think about ourselves and how we really behave in the world. So studying yourself is more about taking the observer position in your own life and noticing patterns that emerge. As often as you can, reflect on your experiences. I think that when we do a retrospective, we are able to see things a little bit more clearly than when we are in the moment. Because in the moment, we have our natural wiring, our natural tendencies that kind of just take over. There's not a whole lot of thought. We don't always pause and decide how to behave next. But in retrospect, we can always see how we behaved and why. I think reflection is one of the best tools that we can use to grow as individuals because it helps us understand where we are right now. There is usually a disconnect between where we think we are and where we really are. And a good example is you probably think you're busy and you have an idea of how you spend your time. But I'm pretty sure that if you had to describe how you think you spend your time, it would be very different than how you're actually spending it if you recorded yourself or like watched yourself actually spend the time. You have to remove your personal biases towards yourself and really just look at the behavior as an observer without any judgment and just try to learn from what you notice. Along with practicing regular retrospection and reflection, I think it's important for you to experiment. I like to do that. Try things that I think will work for me and then decide whether they actually work or not. Like figure out if my assumptions match up with the reality. Experimenting is a great way to learn more about yourself. Overall, self-discovery will be a lifelong project, and it's fascinating because what is more interesting out there than you? Learning about yourself, what works and what doesn't work. And we assume that we know ourselves because we have assumptions about how we behave, and we have information from other people who told us who we are. People tell you, oh, you're really good at this, and you take it as a fact. But in studying yourself, you get to remove all of those biases and just look at who you really truly are out in the world and keep a record of that. The other thing is that identity will constantly be shifting. As remember, we talked about systems earlier, and we talked about the fact that they're dynamic because the components are constantly rearranging themselves and interacting with each other and creating results out of those interactions. Similarly, your character traits, your experiences, the things you go through, whether you go to therapy, like the retrospection you do, everything you do shapes who you become in real time. So you're constantly tweaking and changing different parts of your personality, and over time the whole system evolves. So you have to make this a commitment to spend your life getting to know yourself more. The next thing to do to embrace the self-management framework is to decide for yourself. And I think I kind of touched on that in another video, but this is a theme that will keep coming back because I really want you to hear it, and it's a big component of how we live our lives. So there's a lot of stuff happening outside of us. There are a lot of trends. Everyone wants to go keto, or everyone wants to go vegan, or everyone wants to have a super early morning routine. People are waking up at 4 a.m. to do burpees and whatnot. There are so many trends happening all the time, and they sound good, but we shouldn't follow the trends just because they happen to be out there. I think the part about self-management is that you start with yourself. You are the main character in your life. You start with yourself, analyze your system, look at the different components, figure out what you want to work on or what needs some attention, and then go out there and look at what the trends are. Maybe there's something out there you want to try. But to simply adopt what's happening out there because it's happening and everyone is joining the trend is not helpful unless you have clarity on what you're trying to do. And I think the best way to have clarity without the influence of others is to start with you. What's happening with you? What do you want to work on? What about you is interesting, intriguing, fascinating that you would like to dive deeper into? What do you want to work on? What are some strengths you want to lean into? What are some weaknesses you'd like to work on? But you start with making the decision of where you want to make a change. And then you go look for what the tools are out there that could help you with that. And then you get into the stage of experimentation, and hopefully you find a method out there that matches you and fits within your system. Don't let the world just tell you what you should be doing because everyone else is doing it. We don't all have to do that. I don't want to wake up at 4 a.m. no matter what. I don't need that in my life. So all the videos about super early millionaire mornings, I just don't watch them. It's not for me. And the last thing I want to talk about related to self-management is once you've made a decision of what you are going to work on next, consider the trade-offs. Remember, you are a complex system. There's never going to be a change that you make that is confined to a very specific area of your life. And there are many examples. Maybe I can come up with a few here, but let's say you start exercising because you want to be buff, you want to have a six-pack and all of that. So you think that this is purely a fitness goal. But once you start exercising, you find that it makes you a better friend, a better partner, a better parent, because you have more energy and you are more social when you have energy, and you want to go out and do things with people and you want to help people, and it just changes other aspects of your life. And it's not always positive, right? Sometimes, in an effort to become a better professional, you spend more time at work, you focus on work, but you become a worse partner. Sometimes the trade-offs are not positive, and then you have to notice them and decide whether the change is worth it. So in this third point, what we need to do is consider the potential trade-offs when we embark on a change, and if there are negative consequences, try to mitigate them. If you can't quite figure out all of the possibilities up front, then start with the change, but pay attention to what happens with the rest of your life. So when you make changes in one area of your life, be mindful of the holistic picture of what's happening with you. And hopefully all of it is positive. But sometimes, every once in a while, you have to give up a little something somewhere to make progress somewhere else. And that's okay. What we want to do is be intentional about making those trade-offs. But you can't be intentional about it if you're not even aware of the fact that you are making trade-offs. Self-management goes hand in hand with self-awareness and being intentional, choosing the path you're going down. Don't let the world tell you what to do. You get to decide. No one knows you better than you do. That's why sometimes there are things out there that seem to work for certain people but don't work for others, because we are all very different systems. Ultimately, you are the number one expert when it comes to you. So commit to knowing yourself better, and from that place, decide what you want to do. And then the world will give you all kinds of suggestions for how to get it done. I'll see you in the next video.